Hello VC, good morning. I'm here today to finish up my comparison of this original source. And today I'm going to talk about the Piano Concerto number 1. Before I started doing these comparisons, I always thought that I really liked the second concerto more. It's just so much grander in a way and longer and symphonic. But after listening to these, which I had never really listened to multiple recordings that I have back to back to back a couple times, I really like the first concerto, maybe even better. And I'm sure the taste change, whatever, but for right now, I really enjoyed the first one more. I think before, I always found the first one to be a little more almost belonging to like the classical era and not as romantic as Brahms' later works, and how it kind of sounds like Beethoven in parts. And after taking a deep dive into it, I think I really have a deeper appreciation for it on its own merits. And it really does stick to a more classical and traditional form. It's in 3 movements, and the first movement really is in just straight sonata form with the introduction, the exposition, the development, the recapitulation, and the coda. And it's long, it's 20 minutes. Half of the piece is right there in the first movement, and it's all laid out. And for me, really where like the rubber hits the road is the second movement, the slow movement. It's just so lyrically beautiful and exquisite. And I love listening to that movement in all of the recordings. I feel that's where you can really tell what each player brings in their own style and emotion into the piece. And I'm happy to report today that the original source reissue will not be the worst sounding record of the review. That would be this one with Grafman, with Munch and Boston. This is LSC 2274, and for some reason this one just didn't sonically sound that great to me. It sounded a little distant, it was kind of thin, a little muddy. It just sounded a little far away, which is a bummer. I mean, I love most of the Munch Boston recordings from this era, and the piano playing was so lyrical and pretty. I just wish I could have heard it all a little bit better. Next up is the Gilels and Joachim with Berlin Phil. And this one, I think out of almost everything, and I think out of everything I've heard from this series, this might be the one I like the best. Although the Sacre de Printemps was pretty intense. But this one I did like. Gilel's playing is just fierce in that first movement. Just so precise, and he's playing so hard. And I think Joachim really balances that out with kind of leading the orchestra on a more passionate side, which I think makes for a really good duo, a really interesting duo or trio between all 3 elements. This one, it does suffer from the same just Deutsche Grammophon house sound, kind of shrieky strings, not a lot of bass. Like there's not a big foundation down in the lower octaves that's really supporting this, and that's one of the reasons why I think the mid-range seems to kind of spike right there, because there's no balance on the bottom. And you know, when you're recording music, really for every band that you have, there's pluses and minuses there, you know? Like the very low bass is going to give you that body feel, but it can also sound boomy. And the mid bass is what's going to give you what we consider like warmth, but it also, if you overcook it, it gives you that boxy sound. And this mid-range that they have going on, I think increasing the volume too doesn't help it at all. When things are really heavy around like that 1K, 2K area, when it's really well balanced, that's the section that gives you presence. And when it's a little too much or it's not balanced in there properly, it's what gives you like just ear bleeding mid-range. And you know, distorted electric guitar lives in that range, and it can give you that punch and the crunch, but it can also just be ear splitting and not a nice listen. In this recording, it doesn't go that far. You know, I'm not saying it's an ear-splitting recording, but it's very mid-range heavy, and some shrill stuff going on the top. And I think if it had more of a foundation to support it, the whole thing might come together a little better, but I don't know. I mean, it could also just be strings that aren't recorded that well. And this is, again, it's a bummer because the performance, Jalel's performance is beautiful, especially in that second movement. It's so pretty, and I wish it just sounded better. And, you know, I think a lot of people talk about how it sounds so much better than the original, but I mean, to me, that's no great reward, you know, because the original didn't sound good at all. So making it sound better than something that sounds terrible to where it sounds like kind of all right, is just not a recording that I can just lose myself into and just relax and meditate into. The bad sound just kind of takes me out of it. And for the next three, I would say that it's really comes down to your own personal tastes and what you like and how you like the interpretation of the piece and the soloist, because they're all pretty exceptional recordings. I'm just going to rank them in this way of like what my favorites are. So my third favorite would be this one with Kachin and Montu on London, an original wideband. This one sounds fantastic. Classic Decca sound, warm strings, really bassy. There's a section right in the beginning where the double basses are bowing, and you can hear the bite of the bow on the strings. The timpanis in this are huge compared to the Deutsche Grammophon one, where the timpanis are in there, but they're again like really mid-rangey. And like some of the other recordings I've spoken about, I love Montu with the LSO. Just such a powerful orchestra. And Kachin is great in this. I love his piano playing. I have several recordings of his, and I'll show another one in a minute. But for me, the real star of this one is Montu. His interpretation of this is beautiful. The next one is Curzon and Zell with the LSO again. And this one, originally recorded in 1962, this is an ORG 2011 repress, mastered and cut by Bernie Grunman. Just the classic Kenneth Wilkinson, Kingsway Hall recording. This has everything that the best of those Deccas have. And this one is the most, I would say, audiophile sounding. The height, the depth, the width, the soundstage, the separation of everything on here. It's just a bigger version almost of the Last London. The mid-range in this one is exquisite. It's such a beautiful mid-range and string tone. This one is not as bassy as the last one, but it's still there in the right place, and it's supporting the piece, and it's tight, fast bass. Really in this one, the brass and the woodwinds really come out, and they're really in their spaces, and they're really separated. You can hear individual instruments really well. Nothing in this recording sounds like just a blob of instruments. Curzon's playing is really fantastic. There's a lot of records that I have with him playing where his version is by far my favorite one to listen to. And this record, I would highly recommend this. Maybe not so easy to find, definitely not cheap. This will probably cost you like $100 or more if you can find it. This is also cut at 45, 2 discs. So I think that also gives it a slight edge sonically. Highly, highly recommend this one. And sorry for the glare. I'm in my studio today. Sometimes things just get a little hectic up in the house, so I'm here in the studio and doing what everyone hates the most, showing works in progress behind me, but alas, there it is. It is quieter in here, and there's a little bit less boom because my ceilings are not so high in this room, and of course I have like diffused spotlights everywhere, so you can get like a really constant light. So maybe I'll start shooting some more videos in here. The downside is I had to turn off the AC and all the fans for the noise, and it's hot in here, so I'm gonna just try and show a couple more records and wrap this one up. And now for my favorite out of the whole bunch. If you know the recordings of this, you probably know which one is coming next. This is Arthur Rubinstein and Fritz Reiner with Chicago on Living Stereo. This is LSC 1831, and this is one of the Living Stereos that was recorded before stereo records were being made. So this is from the mono era, recorded in 1954. And it really just goes to show you how advanced and how well the RCA team could record this music even before stereo production was available. So they released it in mono, and I guess sat on the stereo version till the technology kind of caught up to where they were. And this recording is just, it has an awesome power. It's so fierce, and not just fierce, but it's menacing. There's a little bit of like terror in there almost. It's almost scary how hard this is being played. And kind of like in the opposite of the Deutsche Grammophon one, then you have Rubinstein, who's playing so passionately, just this ferocity balanced with this like really big-hearted, impassioned performance. And especially in the second movement, Rubinstein's playing is so beautiful. You know, as a person who's made music and performed my whole life, that's what I'm here for. I want to see a person playing with so much love and with so much passion that they lose themselves in the music and carry us away with them. And that's what this recording does for me. And this recording, this is a classic records from '95, and I can only assume that Bernie cut this one also. Just highly, highly recommend this. Couldn't recommend it anymore. So if you're interested in hearing Brahms Piano Concerto 1, or you have the Deutsche Grammophon version, I'm just showing you these three versions, which at least sonically are head and shoulders better than that one. And not saying that that one is bad or anything, but just better exists. And I'm really just saying sonically because there is no better, best, you know, in people's interpretations of pieces. It's really just what you like. It's what your tastes are. You might like it fast, you might like it slow, hard, soft, whatever that may be. These are just my picks. And I also thought I'd share just really quickly, while I was pulling these off the shelf, there were a few other just Brahms piano works that I really like. So this one is the Three Trios by Brahms with Rubinstein, Shearing, and Fournier. This, I believe, was on the Arthur Salvatore list, and that's why I got it, because I normally just avoid the RCA Red Seal later records. And surprisingly, he was right. This one does sound incredible. Great version. This one also Living Stereo LSC 2330. This is Brahms Festival Quartet in C minor, Opus 60 with the Festival Quartet, which is Goldberg, Primrose, Grudon, and Victor Babin. Really, really sonically rich, enjoyable album. And this one, again, is Kachin. This is a 2-record set of the complete piano works. This is on London, just narrow band 70s. And this is volume 2. For some reason I don't have volume 1, so I need to try and find that. Great sounding solo piano, really beautifully recorded piano, great playing. If you like Brahms solo piano works, this is a great album. And that's that. I'm gonna get out of the studio because it's hot in here and I'm right on the verge of sweating. So I hope you enjoyed the review. I'll see you next time. Bye.